in just a few minutes, so take some time at the casket if you'd like before it is closed. Thank you. Friends and family, my name is Ryan with Hughes Mortuary. I'd like to welcome everybody on behalf of the Torgenson family to the funeral services for Rex Veron Torgenson. Our program today will start with an opening prayer offered by Rex's son, Fernando Torgenson. From there, we will have a reading of the obituary offered by Rex's granddaughter, Tori Ann Jensen. We'll then move on to speakers. Marva Colby, a sister, Marcus Torgenson, grandson, John Torgenson, grandson, and Malachi Nelson, grandson. We'll go to that point. Fernando.
Good morning. Dear God, we ask for your mercy and grace for Rex Torgenson, our father. As he passes from this life into eternity, please bring into your loving arms and grant him peace and rest. We also pray for those who are left behind, that they would find comfort and hope in your presence and the promise of eternal life. May Rex's soul rest in peace, enjoy the fullness of your love. In your precious name we pray. Amen.
Rex Veron Torgenson, age 94, passed away peacefully at his home on Monday, January 19th, 2026. He was born November 3rd, 1931, in Salina, Utah, to Arvin V. and Chloe Torgenson. Rex married his sweetheart, Renee Polson, on February 20th, 1950, beginning a loving partnership that shaped his life and legacy. Rex was raised in Salina, Utah, where he learned the value of hard work early in life. 1 year after marrying Renee, he joined the United States Navy and proudly served during the Korean War until 1955. After his military service, Rex and Renee moved to Layton, Utah, where they raised their family. Rex worked at Hill Air Force Base as a radome technician and was an active member of his community, including service with the JCs. Family was always at the center of Rex's life. He loved coaching his children, hunting and fishing on family camping trips, and making rugs. In 1987, Rex and Renee moved to Washington, Utah, where his creativity and generosity truly flourished. He was known for the most beautiful yard and a remarkable garden that produced the best tomatoes. I'm sure you all know. Rex handcrafted incredible holiday decorations, made hundreds of sheets of peanut brittle to give away each Christmas, and he has sewn over 3,000 quilts, probably more. He loved irrigating and quickly became the neighborhood water master, earning recognition as an honorary leader in environmentally friendly efforts. Despite his many talents and community involvement, Rex always made time for his family. He and Renee attended every event, keeping score at all ball games, cheering at performances, teaching skills, and helping with any project that arose. As he grew older, Rex joyfully embraced new hobbies, including coloring, word searches, and countless diamond art projects. His generosity knew no bounds, and he touched countless lives through his selflessness, kindness, and strength. Rex's legacy lives on in the love he shared, the lessons he taught, and the countless acts of service he gave so freely. He will be deeply missed and forever remembered. He is survived by his children, Amy Torgenson, Fernando and Karen Torgenson, Eugene Valdez, Marie Torgenson, and Rita and Tom Lehman. He is also survived by his grandchildren, Malachi Nelson, Gina and Tony Altanez, Marcus and Sarah Torgenson, Teresa and Ryan Guthmiller, John Torgenson, Tori Ann and John Jensen, and Jesse and Kevin Newman, as well as 10 great-grandchildren. He is survived by his sisters Marva Colby, Arva Lund, and Catherine Edwards. Rex was preceded in death by many loved ones, including his wife, Renee. Funeral services will be held today, beginning at 10, at Hughes Mortuary. Interment will take place at the Washington City Cemetery, and flowers are welcome. Arrangements are made under the direction of Hughes Mortuary. Thank you.
Good morning. We're here to celebrate the life of our brother, father, grandson, grandpa, and friend. He was one of a kind. Rex was unique. He was friends with everybody, neighbors, and everyone else. He was the third of 7 children. Everyone looked up to Rex. He took control of what went on. He taught us how to laugh, how to take things lightly, and how to be present. He taught us how to be a family, how to love each other, support each other, and always contribute to the community and faith. I remember when he was young, he loved to go up Salina Canyon and Soldier Canyon fishing with his dad. They would fish all day long. Sometimes they'd bring home fish, other times they wouldn't, but they didn't care. Rex, he took a dog named Skippy. He would put Skippy in bed with him at night, and his mother would come and say, "Rex, get that dog out of bed." He'd take it and put it out, and the minute she would go to bed, he would get the dog, put it back in bed with him. When he was 14, he delivered milk from Nelson's dairy. He talked his twin sisters into running and giving the milk to the neighbors and the people that he had to take milk to. He took milk up to the internment camp, which was a German internment camp up from Salina where we lived. There was a gentleman up there by the name of Adolf. He was an army guy. And he would get a quart of milk for Rex and drink that milk all the time Rex was there. The people that did all the cooking for the prisoners there at the camp would always send home a large basket, had Rex on it, with a few things like bananas and apples and stuff like that. When Rex and my brother Thad was younger, they rode bareback horses in the rodeos on the 4th of July for several years. We'd go up and watch them on the 4th of July, and they still have a rodeo there in Salina on the 4th of July. Rex went to high school there in Salina, and when he was, just after he got out of high school, he took a couple flying lessons. He thought he could fly a plane. He always told his twin sisters, Arva and Marva, that if they would tickle his feet, he would take them up in the plane. That never happened. Rex and Renee got married, and they lived in Salina, and he worked at the gypsum plant for a short period of time before he joined the Navy. They moved to California, Santa Monica, California, when he was on the USS Pollock. While they was there, they adopted their daughter, Amy. She was 4 years old. After he got out of the service, shortly after that, they moved back to Salina and then on to Layton, where he went to work for Hillfield. After he was there for a couple of years, they took in Fernando, who was 11, and Eugene, who was 10. And a year after that, they adopted them. It wasn't too long after that Fernando and Eugene brought their sisters home, Marie and Rita. Marie was 15 and Rita was 14. They lived with them for a while, and then Rex and Renee adopted them. So they adopted the 5 children. At that time, Rex took up rug knitting. I have one of the blue ones that he did for me. It is beautiful. It's something I'll always remember. They joined the JCs while they were there, and they were very active in the community, and they would go all over the state of Utah to conventions. Rex was the speaker. He loved people. He loved friends. He was one of a kind. Rex and Renee, excuse me, when they lived in when they lived in Layton, they were named Parents of the Year for adopting 5 children, which most people would never adopt 5 children. But like I said, Rex was one of a kind, and so was Renee. They loved people. When our brother Lynn died when they was in Layton from a wreck, Rex took over. He took care of everything. That was the type of person that he was. Nobody could stand up to Rex. He was, as I figured, our perfect brother. When the family would go deer hunting, we'd go down to Salina to the dance, and we always had to have our new Levi's and our red flannel shirts, and we'd dance and dance and dance. Rex was a good dancer. His brother was a little bit better. Rex didn't like that. Anyway, then we'd go up camping, and Fernando and Fernando and Eugene got introduced to hunting deer. We'd stand around the fires, sing songs, and Rex would tell stories, and language that nobody knew, and he didn't either. They were quite colorful. During Christmas, Rex, and then shortly after that, they moved to St. George. Rex was a friend, a neighbor, a pillar of the community. I remember that when he put the flag up on the lawn, they gave him the flag because he was special. He loved being with his family. When he was in, as I said, when he was in St. George there, he took up making quilts. He'd take quilts to the care centers and give quilts to everybody. I have 3. They're special and they're beautiful. Renee, she would make a folder of the way he had designed to make the quilts. And I hope you guys have that. There'll never be a more kind, faithful, loving brother, son, father, or neighbor. We are so very blessed to have Rex in our lives for the 94 years. I'd like to share a thought that my late husband told his children. Always embrace your grief. It is God's way of remembering us just how much we are loved. It was very wise words from a very wise man. Our families, friends, and everyone else wants to thank Marie for all the wonderful time that she has spent with Rex, taking care of him, loving him, and we appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, see how this goes. It's just been so wonderful to see everybody and see people I haven't seen in years, and it's pretty emotional and just means the world, and it's all because of my grandpa. That's the reason everyone is in this room right now, and the reason why we had all of these wonderful reunions in the entryway and getting to see everybody again. It's just been very, very overwhelming, and so I hope I'm able to get through this and do my grandpa proud. And John and I were comparing notes before this, and we're realizing we maybe should have compared notes a little sooner because, John and I had very similar upbringings, and a lot of that revolved around Grandpa. And so I think you're going to hear a lot of similar themes and stories. So I'm Marcus Torgenson. I'm Rex's grandson, and I just wanted to say thank you for allowing me to speak today in honor of my grandpa. I've enjoyed hearing what Aunt Marva said and hearing the obituary by Tori and everything, and I look forward to hearing more memories throughout the service about my grandparents who changed the course of so many lives in this room. I am proud to be one of Rex and Renee's grandkids, and you'll hear plenty of things about both of them today since they were so intertwined. They played a large part in making our childhoods magical simply because they loved us and made sure we always knew that. Man, did Grandpa love us. I still remember talking to him on the phone this last year or so when he didn't quite have the memory that he used to. And he'd sometimes get confused on if he was talking to me or my dad or my brother, or he'd get confused on if he already told me the same thing again and again. But he always told me multiple times during the call how much he loved me. I love you so damn much. I'm so glad you called me. It was just who he was at his core, positive and loving, especially of us grandchildren. He really, really loved us unconditionally for our entire lives. And I guess I don't know everybody's story, but I have to believe that he and Grandma were there within hours or days of any of us being born. And they followed that up with doing their best to make sure the 7 of us grew up like siblings. It's hard to eulogize someone the magnitude of my grandpa in just one speech. He knew so much, or he did so much, and he knew so much, and he built so much, and he had so many experiences that I think that would be impossible. How do you fit in all the stories? A Korean War Navy veteran who, before he decided he didn't like water, would jump off of a supply ship in the middle of the ocean to swim with fellow sailors while others watched for sharks from the deck. The frugal grandpa, who went years buying the same exact type of shoe from Kmart in bulk. We all remember those black slip-ons. And when one pair started to get a hole in the toe, that became his yard pair, and he opened a new box for his dress pair. This is the guy who made peanut brittle by the ton, grew tomatoes in his garden that tasted like they had sugar on them, and who could literally build anything with his drill motor, some screws, and a pile of 2x4s, and who taught me how to properly eat at a buffet. Hint, you're supposed to skip the salad and bread because those just take up space. He taught me that at the Grand America one year when we went to our first fancy buffet. One of my earliest memories of Grandpa was from my 11th birthday party. He kept telling me, I remember when I was 12 years old, it was awesome. And I was like, Grandpa, I'm 11. And he said, I know, but man, being 12 was awesome. And then it became a joke for the rest of his life. Whenever he was telling another story about topping sugar beets in a field in Salina and getting the tip of the beet topper stuck in his shin, or working as a coal truck driver when his dad got sick and he had to drop out of school, or herding sheep all alone in the mountains around Salina for weeks on end, I'd ask him how old he was when that happened, and he'd always say, around about 12 years old. We even joked that that's what he should have titled his autobiography, When I Was 12 Years Old. In fact, I have my own stories of when I was around about 12 years old, and they all have to do with my grandpa. One of the very best memories of my childhood was when John and I were on the same Little League team for a year, and we were coached by my dad and Grandpa. How old was I? Around about 12 years old. I also remember one of those summers when us grandkids were staying at Grandpa and Grandma's house, and Grandpa had to irrigate the yard, but his assigned time slot that week was like at 2 in the morning or something. And I remember begging him to wake us up so we could go on that adventure with him in the middle of the night. I also remember being extremely scared of the dark and jockeying with John or Malachi for whoever could be the closest walking behind Grandpa when we were out there. No one wanted to be the last guy in line and risk getting snatched by whatever monster we were afraid of. I remember one time we were all tripping around behind him, doing our best to be as close to him as possible. And He stopped, and he turned around, and he shined the flashlight on us, and he looked at the three of us, and he said, "I don't know why you guys are so scared. I'm with you. I'm not going to let anything happen to you." And it was a pretty simple, innocuous comment that a grandpa is supposed to make. But I also remember how it made me feel invincible. I'm nearly 50 years old now, and I still think of what he said when I'm out camping or somewhere alone and it's dark and I get scared. I just think Grandpa's watching out for me and I'm going to be okay. I remember when I was around about 12 years old, and my parents went to a Halloween party the weekend after Halloween, Halloween must have fallen on a weekday or something, and because we all had our Halloween candy with us. And we took all of our Halloween candy over to Grandma and Grandpa's, and they were going to babysit us. And I guess Grandma must have been busy with something else because only Grandpa was watching us. I know this because I remember Grandpa asking us what we wanted for dinner that night, and we said we would like to eat our Halloween candy for dinner. And of course, Grandpa let us, and Mom and Dad were no doubt frustrated when they got back to pick us up after their party, and we were doubled over in abdominal pain and vomiting from scarfing down all of our Halloween candy. Also remember when I was around about 12 years old, and we had a family reunion up at Fish Lake. I remember one of the days where Grandpa said he wanted to take all of his grandkids fishing. And we went up to some creek that fed Fish Lake that Grandpa must have known from his childhood. I think it was called UM. And I still remember how happy he was running around from grandkid to grandkid, pointing out where we could catch a fish in this tiny creek. His goal that day was to make sure every single one of us had a chance to catch a fish all by ourselves with him showing us where to cast. And I don't know why these kinds of memories stick with you for so long, but I just remember the joy in his face as each one of us reeled in our fish. And if you know anything about Grandpa, we all definitely caught a fish that day. His obituary, like Tori said, he made well over 3,000 quilts. And when I first read that, I thought that has to be an underestimate. I thought it would have been at least 100,000. It feels like every single person in this room, probably everyone we know, and certainly any baby that was born in the last 25 years has a quilt from Grandpa. Grandpa made me a bunch of quilts, but he made me a quilt that was reinforced with sleeping bag material when I left to college at the University of Utah. I guess to make it that well and reinforce it and everything, it took him quite a while. And he was worried that since I'd grown up in a warm place like St. George, I would get cold during the winter in a place like Salt Lake. Dad would always stop by their house on his way to work, and he'd get a cup of coffee, and Grandpa showed him the quilt that he'd made me. I was leaving for college the next day, and Grandpa was really excited to give it to me. It was a blue quilt, all reinforced and everything, and I guess my dad told Grandpa, "You can't send him up there with a blanket like that. They'll kill him. Those are BYU's colors." So my grandpa stayed up all night that night, making me a red quilt, reinforced with sleeping bag material so I wouldn't get cold, to take to college at the University of Utah. And for those of you that know me pretty well, you know I'm a huge University of Utah fan, and I own very few blue things. And I have to credit my grandpa with instilling those feelings of school pride early on in my college career. I am tremendously proud that my last name is Torgenson. When they first meet me, a lot of people, especially my patients, will say, "You don't look like a Torgenson," or "You're not what I expected." And I know that's at least mildly racist of them, but I get kind of excited when people say that because it means I get to tell them the story about Grandpa and Grandma and how they adopted first Aunt Amy and then my dad and Uncle Gene, and then how Dad and Uncle Gene serendipitously ran into Aunt Marie and Aunt Rita at the city pool and church and things, and found out they were not in a good foster home situation. So they brought them home, and they asked Grandma and Grandpa if their sisters could live there too. And then Grandma and Grandpa adopted them as well. And what a beautiful story that is. I would argue that although Grandma and Grandpa couldn't have a family the traditional way, they created more of a family than most people who get that privilege. The funniest thing about all of it is that Grandpa hated it when people called his kids his adopted kids. And it really bothered him when the other people who have adopted kids referred to those kids as adopted kids. Despite the inevitable questions a 6'1" white guy would get walking around Utah with a bunch of brown kids, He would just tell people, well, those are my kids. And then he'd stare at that person, daring them to ask another question. End of discussion. Those are the things that make me proud to be a Torgenson. Like I mentioned, sometimes when I walk into a patient's room and introduce myself, they say, Dr. Torgenson, you don't look like a Dr. Torgenson. And I get to tell them that I wouldn't be either of those things if it wasn't for my grandpa. I owe a lot to my grandparents. They spent a significant portion of their lives trying to make mine better. I'm pretty sure Grandpa and Grandma are who made me woke. In fact, they were woke before it was cool, adopting brown kids and teaching them and us to treat people the same despite economic or cultural differences, to not care about superficial things, and to accept everyone for who they were, no matter what. Sure, they are both gone physically now, and that leaves a huge void in our lives. But that doesn't mean they are gone forever. They raised my dad, and they taught him what it means to be a good person. And they live on in the way my dad raised me, and in turn, things I teach my own 2 kids as I try to help them learn how to navigate this world. I know Grandpa loved me so damn much, and the feeling was mutual. I was lucky to literally have the best grandpa ever who filled my childhood with countless memories of when he was round about 12 years old. And he extended that love and guidance as I became an adult. Grandpa inspired me to be a better person, and I'm really going to miss him so damn much. Thank you.
My brother is always right. Probably should have just done a duet, basically. So just act like you just heard what he did, and then that's what you're going to get with me. But I think that the unique thing with Grandpa and Grandma were that they loved us all, and so we all have these unique experiences, maybe of the same things, you know. These are just love tears, you know. I'm sorry. If you loved him, I hope you'd understand how hard it could be. My grandpa, Rex Verone Torgenson, passed away January 19th at 94 years old. It is difficult for me to realize and think of the wisdom and love that he possessed to me as a child, and even through our last coherent conversations these last few months, that he was 47 years old, the exact same age that I am when I was born. I feel like I don't know anything. I don't. And when I go back and when I was a little kid, I look at my grandpa, he knew everything about everything. Most importantly, he knew how to treat people, and mostly his family, with unconditional, unwavering love. Grandma and Grandpa, I mean, I've said this for years, they are just the definition of love to me. I would say Grandma and Grandpa, and there'd be equal sign in love. If you looked it up in a dictionary, or I guess Wikipedia now, there'd be a picture of them probably on their wedding day. Caleb, we were talking about that beautiful picture, or surrounded by us family. So my North Star of what defines love is now gone, but the direction remains, and I think that is a lesson. Not lessons learned in books or in research, but lessons learned the most important way, learned by observation of the way that Grandpa carried himself and his selflessness for others, including me. And I think you can choose in life regular love, lots of love, or meaningful, deep, from beyond the stars type love. And that's what Grandpa chose, him and my grandma. And we all, obviously, just the impressiveness of adopting 5 children. You know, they couldn't have kids of their own, and they chose love anyway. They adopted Aunt Amy, and then, you know, babies are hard to come by, and so they didn't care. They just wanted kids and more people to show their love to. And so my dad and is a, 11-year-old, 12-year-old, going into 7th grade. My Uncle Gene, they said, hey, this is what we have. They said, we'll take them, because they just wanted kids. And then when Aunt Rita and Aunt Marie showed up for just a safe place, they said, and we'll take them too, because that's who they were with their unconditional love, and they wanted to share it with more people. And you know what? Walking into a room, people might have just been a little bit curious, seeing my grandma and grandpa walk in with Aunt Amy, my dad, Uncle Gene, Aunt Rita, and Aunt Marie. But like Marcus said, and as far as grandpa was concerned, they could stay curious, because that was just his family. He wasn't one for explaining anything about that. I mean, I kind of think maybe grandpa loved nosy people, because he loved to keep them in the dark. You never said the word adopted. You never qualified what family meant. He was proud of what he was proud of what he and grandma built. And again, I witnessed this firsthand when grandpa and grandma would take all 7 of us grandkids in for the summer, and we go to Harmon's for ice cream, and looks like the United Nations envoy coming in there. Malachi with his afro, all tall, beautiful. Marcus, dark brown, Gina, dark brown, me, a little lighter brown, Tori, kind of brown, Jesse brown. All of us walking in there. And, I remember Gina always got the bubblegum ice cream. Grandpa, of course, was always vanilla, and you remember Snell Grove. I thought Snell Grove was the fanciest ice cream in the world because we only got that on his birthday, you know what I mean? But, it's this small town Utah, so that's an odd sight to see. And so I remember a specific time when a woman came up and was like, are these your grandkids? And Grandpa was like, yep. And then sideways grin kind of nudged me, and we giggled and moved on. And that reminds me, and I actually shared this with Grandpa a couple years ago. There's a song by one of my favorite artists named Benjamin Todd. And like us, I think that he wasn't blood related to his grandpa. And it says, people say I look like my grandfather, and I begin to explain we ain't even kin. He interrupts with why bother, and then saunters away with a sideways grin. And that's Grandpa with that sideways grin as we walked along. The teacher, I don't know how many kids can say, and my mom and dad, you helped, but my grandpa taught me how to read, we were living up there for a little bit while my dad was getting settled in his job down here. And Mike's new bike, I think my mom still has that in her hope chest. The grandpa taught me how to read, He taught me how to fish, how to clench our lips just right to make sure that we each did get a fish when we were out up on UM and in Fish Lake. He taught me how to play catcher in baseball. It was very tough sometimes when you bring in Lee Messersmith for side practices at the house in Washington, where you'd have me standing, squatting down on my haunches and like marching up and down the grass on the side of the house. And I remember my thighs burning or whatever, but they'd say, hey, your butt can't sag, you got to stay like this. And I remember exactly. So always just trying to make us better in everything that we did, including baseball. Taking that bat every single time we were warming up, Dad and Marcus, and he'd draw a square at the front left of the home plate and say, that's where you stand, John. You don't stand in the runner's way, but you stand here so you can tag them out when they're on their way home. And so I remember when I helped a buddy coach a Little League team, I did that, and I was just kind of like, well, I guess lessons do stick. It just, there was a reason for it. He taught me why his head was bald and his chest was so hairy. You're driving down the road in Layton, and you go down that big hill in your white van, and you slam on the brakes, all your hair is going to fall off your head onto your chest, all right? And so that he taught me, scientifically questionable, I guess, a little bit. I'm not a doctor, but spiritually perfect, because we all have that memory. And, he was the man who could do anything. Like Marcus said, the night that me, Malachi, him, scared of the dark, probably little too old to be scared of the dark, if I'm being honest, but I'm just going to, he didn't judge us. He just comforted us. And then he's telling us he's watched sheep at night so wolves wouldn't get them up alone up in those mountains, and I'm like, gee, I can't barely walk up this irrigation thing. My brother and Malik, I'm squeezed between them, by the way. I'm not, hunting, fishing, woodworking. I mean, we made lawn chairs. One summer, I was a perfectionist, and I'm not good at math at all. I'm terrible at math. And so I think, we always wanted straight A's and stuff like that. And I got an A- or a B+, so I chose that I needed to go attend summer school with the kids who had failed pre-algebra. But I think I had, there was some motivation there because it was over by Grandma and Grandpa's house at Pine View Middle School. And so my mom and dad, I went and lived with them while I attended summer school, and I was treated like a king as I was awoken in the morning to fresh bread, and then they let me go back to bed, because Grandpa had to make it early in the morning. And then I'd go to summer school, and again, this me and a whole bunch of kids who had failed it, people smoking, going into class and everything, but Grandpa would pick me up, drop me off. And that summer, we made that extension on the back of his shed at the back side of his property lawn, I remember, and even we rolled out the roofing and everything. And I look back on, the things that he taught us as kids, and I was probably in his way, man, but I never felt that for a second. My cuts, I'm sure, were not perfect, but I'm sure they're still sitting there, imperfect cuts, but like a perfect relationship with my grandpa. And I'm thankful for that. The gardening, the tomatoes we all know about, the quilting. I mean, when I found out, about Grandpa, I just texted Karina and Valerie, two very good friends of mine and worked for me for over 10 years. And the first thing I get back is, from Coco, I'm the proud owner of a Rex of her own quilt. And then Valerie writes back, Little Lulu's a proud owner of a Rex of her own quilt. These are baby quilts that they got and everything. And so again, I think if everyone in this room could probably raise their hand, and maybe, just maybe, it'll have a little extra warmth tonight or the next time that you use it, because we're thinking about him, thinking about Grandpa right now. He just had a quiet competence. He didn't brag, he just did. Like Marcus said, born on Marcus's 11th birthday, but around about 12, and me and Marcus and Tori would love to ask him, when did you do this, Grandpa? Around about 12. And he'd love to get that laugh out of us. He was silly in those ways. When's the biggest fish, what's the biggest fish you caught? Well, I was around about 12. When was it when you slept in the mountains with the sheep herd? Around about 12. When did you meet Grandma? Around about 12. Grandpa, no, you didn't meet Grandma around about 12, I didn't know you could fight in the Korean War when you were 12 years old, but apparently with Grandpa, that's what he wanted us to believe. But I think the truth is that he lived a full life, early and always. Grandpa spaghetti, I got to talk about it. The very best spaghetti that I've ever had, full stop. So good that for school dances, I know it started off, I think, Marcus, with yours, but in mine, I remember, of course, my dad's there in a tuxedo as the maitre d', and we converted the big family room into a fancy Italian restaurant. And we had all our friends and their dates and everything, and we'd go over to their house, and I was so proud. My mom and Grandma were serving. I think Tori was there hostessing, and it was just so awesome, and I was so proud, like I am today, that Rex was my grandpa, when they were talking about how good the spaghetti was, or just how cool it was that they did that. I'm so proud to be a Torgenson, and that it was my grandpa and my family who had done that. I've stolen the recipe. I have it on an index card, and it's one of my prized possessions. There's tomato sauce splatters on it and everything. Amanda knows it's in our little recipe box. Buy your book that you made, Marie, that one year, which Aunt Marie, which is so beautiful to still have. I still make your dips and things we had for Christmas Eve. But, and so I had the index card, and I still have it. I mean, shoot, what was a couple months ago, I made it, and for a big group of people up in Page, Arizona, and then about a couple weeks later, someone had leftovers, giving it to someone else, and they said, "Hey, Krista wants that spaghetti recipe. What happened? Where'd you get that?" And so, are you willing to share it? It's a family secret. And I said, "I'll share it." Yeah. So I took a picture of the index card and sent it to them. But you got to get. The onion's got to be translucent. I don't like onions, so you make them translucent. You've got to wash the meat, cold water, right? The Italian seasoning, I know the exact shakes that you put on it. Then you got to remind Grandma about the garlic bread, which we forgot a lot because we probably had more than often. We had our spaghetti with some burnt garlic bread because we got too busy talking or doing something else. All these memories that I have with him, from him just supporting me in flag football, baseball, road trips to Salina and Redmond, quiz bowls, spelling bees, tackle football, to high school dances, to graduations, to calls from Salt Lake and from South Bend asking him if I was going to be okay. I think I just needed some of that central Salina, central Utah wisdom and Redmond grit, and I needed them. And I'd call him, and he always had a way of simplifying something and showing me what doing the right thing meant. It was not always the easiest thing. It was with love in your heart and care for others and confidence in yourself. And again, Grandma and Grandpa always showed up. We were lucky to live here. And showing up for quiz bowls, spelling bees. Who shows up for a fourth grade quiz bowl or a fifth grade spelling bee? Well, those are my grandparents sitting in the back of the room, just wanting to watch and support me. And I felt it. I feel lucky and proud that I was so close to him. So close that we had, they used to have, I don't know if they still do this is decades now ago as I realize how old we are. But they had the reflections contest, and it was this contest and the theme this particular year was, I am proud of ... And it was framed in the house for a long time, but I chose as a little kid, it said, I am proud of my grandpa, he teaches me how to make things. And then I think I had a little log cabin that we made, a little car, and then those lawn chairs where Grandma would always sit out there on the side and, have her coffee in the mornings. And he also taught me a lot more. He taught me about the connection of family. He made quilts, but he also weaved this love among us all, where I do look at you, Malachi, Teresa, Gina, Jesse, like siblings, just like I do with Marcus and Tori, because of the love that they had for us. He did teach us a lot, and I am proud of him. He left behind people who know how to love. Love is a choice, love shows up, and love doesn't need labels. There's another song that says, when my time arrives and the light's going to leave my eyes, it's the love I find that's going to ease the sting. Well, Grandpa, this still stings more than words can explain, but for the love that you found and then that you imparted and gave on to me, I thank you. My North Star is gone, but because of him, the lessons that he showed me, I still know the way. Thank you, Grandpa. I'm going to miss you. One other thing is the best of us, Gina, she's been going through a lot, and she can't be here today, and she just wanted to say, I can't have the capacity to come up with a lot right now, but I know that Grandpa and Grandma taught me honest, unconditional love for family through their example, and I love them so much. Thank you, Grandpa. I love you guys.
I love hearing all the stories about my grandpa. I could listen to you guys talk about that stuff all day long. Just like John said, like some of these stories, they're all going to be the same, but still just as special. Our grandpa walked around with this cane, and everybody knows it. But I think it was like his Clark Kent in disguise. Because this guy was like Superman. He could do anything, and he did everything. He taught us how to build. He'd be in pain because he hurt his back a long time ago, but he'd never stop moving. He'd be out in his garden. He'd be in the house working on or sewing stuff for us. Oh my gosh, it's hard to imagine that he's gone. He was tough as nails. The one thing that I just want to, get across was he achieved everything that he needed to. He wanted us to be good people. He wanted us to grow up to be great men, great women, and he did that. Be a great friend, be a great leader, love your family, reach out to people when they need you. It's important. And I think when I look out at everybody that's here today, my family, he achieved all of that. And we should all be proud. And we should all walk away with that. I'm so proud to be his grandson. And I'm so proud to be related to all of you. And that's it. I love you guys.
We would like to thank all of our speakers today for their prepared thoughts and memories. We will now have a closing song, God Bless America. All that would like to are welcome to join in and sing along. It is played on a recording, but you're welcome to sing along. Encouraged to sing along. After the closing song, we will have a closing prayer by Fernando Torgenson. Following the closing prayer, we will invite the pallbearers to come up and help us with the casket. We'll then be proceeding to the cemetery. Graveside service will take place at the Washington City Cemetery. We'll have military honors and some thoughts shared there. So we'll go on to our closing song, God Bless America.
I thank that for everybody. I think this is kind of a little story behind that song. But I remember him, when he had our kids. And it was great if Mom and Dad had taken, he would take all 7 kids, all summer long during school vacation. I thought, man, thank goodness for me and the wife and everything, but, they loved it. That was a treat for them. They thought it was fantastic. But some of the stories that he's told about them and us, but I remember going there sometimes and he would tell them, when I die, I want you, all my grandkids, to stand up after the funeral like we all did right now and stand up and sing God Bless America. That's all he wanted for his funeral. So I deeply appreciate all you guys standing up, and thank my kids, grandkids, and everybody for doing it. And I printed those songs out, kind of surprised the kids yesterday. I said, well, you're going to be singing too. And they're like, what? And I said, well, but everybody will sing along. So I appreciate that for singing along, and he would be very happy and very proud of all the family. So, like everybody was saying, I would just like to thank Dad and myself for taking care of me. Taking care of me for all those years. I mean, wow. This was the first time in my life that I felt loved and cared for. And I'd never, realized anything like that happened, that people cared that much. But they did. And so I want to thank him for the love him and Mom gave me, the things that he showed me. I mean, he made the man I am. He taught me everything, how to drive a nail, how to dig a ditch, anything. I mean, I didn't know nothing. I was a dumbass kid, And so I am the man because of him, that you see before you. So I just want to thank him so much. He was my guardian angel. He saved me. He was my Superman. And for that, I love him very, very much. Thanks, Dad, and rest in peace. I love you. Forgot something. Got to do the closing prayer. Got to do my job. Dad would have told me, yeah, you're not done yet, kid. So, anyway, Lord Jesus, our Redeemer, you willingly gave yourself in death so that all might be saved and pass from death to life. We humbly ask for you to comfort your servants in their grief and receive Dad, Rex, into the arms of your mercy. You alone are the Holy One. You are merciful itself. You unlock the gates of life for those who believe in you. So, as the days go by without me, please try to understand that an angel came and called my name and took me by the hand and said, my place was ready in heaven, far above, and that I have to leave behind those that I deeply love. So when the days go on without me, don't think that I'm far apart, for every time you think of me, I'm right there in your heart. Rest in peace, Dad. Thank you.